Nowhere studio today, and what we're going to be showing you today is how to do a distressed finish using Annie's dark wax as well as sandpaper. So we're going to take these nice end tables that we've already painted in the chalk paint old white, and then we're going to, we've already done a coat of clear wax as well, so we're going to do a second coat of clear. We're going to distress using the sandpaper. We like to use a 220, and then we'll cover it back up with clear. We'll do the dark wax application, and we'll show you how you can kind of fade away to show a nice aged look. So welcome. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask them on here, and if you can't make it for our live video, we'll also have this up on the page so you can ask questions and we'll answer them as quickly as possible too. So, and we would love to hear as well as what you would like to see us paint and show you, so please feel free to leave comments to that as well. So a little bit about Edwin Loy Home is we started the shop in 2012, and I graduated from Otterbein with an art degree, so I've been painting, creating for a while now, and I have a background in art history, painting, photography, drawing, graphic design. So this is a passion of mine and I love to do this. So what we're going to show you now is kind of what you want to start with for your process. So after the paint, after you've chosen your color, you should then have your waxes. So we like to always do clear wax first, and then we like to age over with either the dark wax or the black wax. So we also have brushes and then rags. These are just waxing rags. We sell them here at the shop. And then sandpaper as well. A 220 is great to distress with. So what we're going to do first is we are going to apply the clear wax for a second coat, and we like to work in sections. You don't want to do too much at once, because if you do, it kind of gets a little overwhelming. So when you apply the clear wax, you need to work it into the surface and then immediately wipe off what's not being absorbed into the surface. And then we'll show you the distressing too. So we're going to use Annie's large wax brush here. And you're just going to work it in. It's actually really easy to apply. It's a really soft paste wax. And the brush does all the hard work for you. You don't have to really press that hard. I think a lot of the misconception is that you really have to push the brush into the surface. And you don't. The bristles can work into the paint. And then you're going to take a rag and you're going to rub it in. You're basically going to remove the excess wax so it's not sticky or tacky. So we're going to keep repeating this process. You're going to reload your brush as you move along. And the reason we like to say 2 coats of the clear wax is because we tend to miss an area when we're waxing. So when you do at least 2 coats of the clear wax, it's really nice because you get to, catch those areas that you might have missed during your first application. So taking the rag there again, working it in, back and forth, and you kind of wipe off in one direction. And then I'm going to just rotate it to make it a little bit easier and do the same thing. Just apply the second coat of the wax. Let the brush do all the hard work for you. Take your rag. And as your rag gets filled up with wax, you need to make sure that you have plenty of rags on hand so that you can grab a new rag and not have to be searching for one. So if your surface feels a little sticky or tacky, that just means that there's still a little wax on the surface. So all you have to do is just wipe it off. Now say you come back the next day and it's still a little sticky or tacky, a second coat of wax, working it into the surface, will actually soften that first coat, and then you can remove the excess wax that way. Alright, so now that I have the second coat of wax all over the surface, what we're going to do is we're going to show you how you can use a 220 grit sandpaper to lightly distress the surface. So a lot of people, they're not sure of how to distress a surface or where they want to distress the surface. What I tend to say is I like it to look as most natural as possible. You also can reference old furniture that you can find online, so antiques, vintage furniture, and look how they've kind of worn over time. So it tends to be where the area sticks out a little bit more. Even these lines, they will give it a nice look on edges, and even around the feet too, where it tends to get bumped a lot. So all you do is, I like to fold my sandpaper. I think it's a lot easier to manage. And you're just going to lightly distress until you see some of the wood coming through. And then when you have these little indentations, those are a great way to kind of highlight. Can you see that okay? Alina's going to kind of bring the camera over so you can see this up close. And feel free to ask any questions if you're tuning in. But you can see how we just are lightly, and you always go off this with a very, very soft hand. If you rub too hard, you're going to really push through the paint, and then you're going to probably take too much off. Now you can do the distressing before you do your waxing. The reason we like to wax then distress is because it actually cuts down on sanding dust. So if we were to do this before the wax, you would actually create a lot more sanding dust. So doing it after the first coat of wax, or even the second, it will really cut down that sanding dust. And always start with just a little bit of distressing, because you can always add more. If you sit here and you just distress away, what tends to happen is that you tend to take off way too much, and then you step back and you're not happy with it. So I always kind of take a little off, and then I'll step back and we'll look at it. And this will get built up with wax, so you have to rotate your sandpaper too, so be sure to do that. So you can see I'm just pressing gently, and I'm going to take a rag and just kind of dust it off. Come on this side, take a little bit off. It's just kind of a back and forth. Now it doesn't have to be completely symmetrical. When you have it too even, it tends to look too precise. So you always want to make it look a little off center, I guess, just because it looks more pleasing to the eye. You can see where we're just taking a little bit of sandpaper here. And then I'm going to come up right here. This is a nice little corner that I think will kind of distress very nicely. So let's get up here in this line here. And if you find that you missed an area that you wanted to distress, you can always add that in too. So now that we have the distressing, what we want to make sure is that we cover this back up with clear wax, because if you go right at it with dark wax, what you've done is you've actually exposed the paint underneath. So it will look really dark versus having a nice kind of aged look. So you don't need a ton of the clear wax, just a little bit. And what you're going to do is you're just going to apply it over those areas that you distressed on. You can see it actually really brightens it back up too, and that's why I like to say kind of do a little bit of distressing, step back and take a look at it. Even at that point, you can add a little bit of the clear wax to brighten it back up, and that will actually hold true for the darker colors even more, because this is a light color with the dark wood underneath. Same process goes, you apply it, you rub it in, and you wipe off the excess wax. People, they could leave it like this if you like how this looks. Another way to add a little bit more dimension is to now use Annie's dark wax. So what you want to make sure is that you have clean rags and a clean brush. This is a little waxing brush that we get from another company that's not Annie's. But what I'm going to show you now is how you can use the dark wax to now even further give it even more distressed look. So I always like to get in these nice dark deep areas with the dark wax. And you can see I'm applying it nice and thin too. Now don't panic. If you get it somewhere you don't want it, I'll show you how you can take that off. And since we have clear wax down, what it's actually done is it's protected your paint and created a barrier from the dark wax staining your paint. So you apply it and usually wait just a couple of seconds to let it start aging. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take a clean rag, make sure it's clean and doesn't have any clear wax on it. Because if it has clear wax on it, it will actually remove the dark wax. So that's good to know, because that's what I'm going to show you too, is what you can do to get the dark wax off of the areas that you don't want it to be. So you can see how it's really aged this. Get it a nice look, just a little bit more distressed look. And it always looks really nice in crevices, you know, which any area that it has a little where the, you know, dark wax can settle down in. If you have brush stroke too, this will actually catch up better even on brush strokes too. So you can see there how it really settled down in there. We're going to do that down here on this double circle. So you let that sit for just a second. I'll even add some in here too. And it doesn't have to be all over. You can just do it in sections, so you don't have to apply the dark wax everywhere. Just kind of where you want it. So you can really see how that really aged in there nicely. Now, if you want it to be a little bit darker, like say you rub this in and you take more off than you wanted to, just put a little bit more on. It's more about a thin, even application than putting it on real thick. And then you can rub and remove it if you wait just a little bit longer. You can't leave any of this dark wax in here if it's a little too thick, because what it can do is that will never cure. So you still need to remove the excess. It's just more about putting it on a little bit thinner and letting it sit a little longer. So you can actually see the color change from this nice creamy white, which is the old white, and then we've used the clear and the dark wax. So you can see how the color has changed. Now I'm going to show you how you can use the clear wax to remove the dark wax where you don't want it. So what I do is I like to take just a rag, wrap it around my hand, and just a little bit of clear wax. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of start away from where I want it to come off. I'm just going to kind of rub and remove the excess. So you can see now I can brighten the surface back up to the original kind of old white color. And that really gives it a nice aged look. And it's always just a tiny amount of clear. You don't need a lot. If you put too much on, it's really going to take it all off. So see how we can just brighten the raised areas up and let that dark wax settle down in those deeper areas of the furniture. And that just gives it a nice look, a nice aged look.
Jackie Barber said, looks nice, but can you leave more of the dark wax on?
Yes, you can definitely leave more of the dark wax on. You just have to put it on a little bit just put on a thinner application, let it sit a little longer. Then you would rub and remove the excess and it'll be darker. So what I can do is I can show you how that can look. Let's do it on this one. So you don't want it real thick, because if you put it on too thick, it never gives it the chance to age. Just let it sit a little bit longer. Remember, clear wax will remove the dark, so it won't completely, you'll still see if it gets really, especially down into your brush strokes, you won't completely get it out. And if you decide you don't like the dark wax, I would first try using the clear to remove the dark, and then if you don't get it off all the way, you're probably going to have to repaint those areas. So we'll let that sit a little bit longer, and then we're just going to keep working over here, kind of removing the excess dark where we don't want that to be. I think it looks quite nice. I like how you can play with the waxes to kind of change the appearance of a finish. You know, you can take something that has great lines and curves and accentuate it using her waxes. She also has white wax and black wax. So we tend to see the white wax and the white wax show up a little bit better on the darker colors. And then obviously the black wax, like the dark wax, shows up good on the lighter colors. But that doesn't mean that you can't use it vice versa. It just tends to show up a little bit better. Alright, so let's switch back over here. You can see how that's darkened up a little bit more over here. So there, that's a little bit darker from where I started on this side. So now if I wanted to, I could just leave it a little bit darker. I could kind of leave it a little bit darker down in here. So I would just kind of start away and just lightly remove some of that splotchiness. The clear helps kind of blend that. So you can see how you can make it much darker. If you want it darker in there, you're just going to have to let that sit longer. If you definitely want to see this more of an aged look in here, you're going to have to let it sit longer. But you have to remove that excess because you can't just leave it. And there again, you just take your clear wax and you always kind of start away from where you want it to blend up to. If you come right at it with your clear wax, you're actually going to take it all off. So I always like to work my way up to where I know I want to take it off. You can see a nice difference, how you can get a little bit more of that antique-y aged look here, where this is a little bit more subtle. It's all up to you how you want it to look, which is, I think, what's so great about chalk paint is that you can make it how you want it to look, which I love. And say you come back tomorrow and you still think maybe it's a little too dark, maybe you got a little too dark. Just use a little bit of clear to help blend or remove. Or if you know you want more dark wax, just add a little bit more dark wax. So you kind of can go back and forth playing with it. As long as you get that first coat of clear wax down, you can definitely come and play around with the dark waxes. If you go right at this, say you paint it and you forget to clear wax, and you go right at it with the dark wax, you're actually going to stain the paint. So that's why we like to put the clear wax down first, and then we can age over with the colored waxes. So it's really fun, and you get to play around with it and create what you want to look. The look that you want, excuse me. So if you want to, Lena, if you want to show them, this table is the one that's actually finished. So we kind of showed you how you can get that nice aged look on the surface. And I think too, what people understand the beauty of chalk paint too is the wax is so easy to maintain. So if you get a little hiccup on an area, you can use the wax to buff out little imperfections and really brighten up the surface again, especially on these lighter colors that you see. And you can see here how we've kind of used the dark wax to age in on the top. And if I want to make this look a little smoother, remember, you just kind of work your way towards it and see how I can start to blend some of that off and give it a nice feathered look. But this is chalk paint old white with clear wax and the dark wax aging. And that's it for it. So if you have any questions, feel free to shoot us a message. What do you want to see? We are open to seeing more of what you all want to see, and we'll love to do videos for that. So we'll put this up on our page later today, and feel free to add comments. If you need to message us with specific questions, we're here to help. But we hope you enjoyed our first live video. So thanks, guys.